Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Um, Today, we are going to be looking at something pretty interesting and a little bit provocative,
Yeah.
from the world of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Buying the Bitcoin top forever. Have you heard of this?
I have heard of this. It's a pretty hot topic.
It's a hot topic. It sounds a little counterintuitive.
Right.
Why would anybody intentionally buy at the highest price?
Yeah. You want to buy low, sell high, right?
Exactly. That's what we've always been told.
Right.
So we're gonna try to unpack this a little bit. We've got some source material here from Bitcoin University,
Okay.
specifically an article by Matthew CRS, and it's pretty interesting stuff. It definitely challenges the conventional wisdom when it comes to investing.
Yeah, and it's a little more than just buying high. It's really a philosophical shift.
Yeah.
Moving away from that day trading mentality
Right.
and really embracing Bitcoin as something different than your average investment.
So it's more about the why behind the buy,
Exactly.
not just the price tag.
Yeah.
Interesting. And the author of this article, like a lot of prominent Bitcoin proponents, seems to be all in on accumulating Bitcoin as like a lifelong strategy.
For sure.
There's no day trading, no panic selling, just steadily increasing their holdings no matter what the market does.
Yeah, and the core idea here is that Bitcoin's value isn't really tied to, its price in dollars or euros or whatever on any given day.
Okay.
It's about understanding Bitcoin as a superior form of money, really something that could revolutionize the whole financial system as we know it.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
Yeah.
So the article even goes so far as to say Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom,
Right.
which is a very bold statement.
It
What does
is.
that even mean?
Well, it suggests that as long as, government currencies are subject to inflation and devaluation, Bitcoin with its fixed supply could just continue to appreciate in value.
Okay. So how does that play out in
Right.
practice? How does that actually work?
Well, one key difference that the article highlights is that, with Bitcoin, you don't have the same dynamic as you do with something like gold.
Okay.
So, if the price of gold rises, mining operations increase to meet that demand.
Right. More gold gets produced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which leads to more supply, and that kind of stabilizes the price.
Right. Yeah.
With Bitcoin, no matter what the demand is, the supply is capped.
Okay.
It's always going to be 21 million Bitcoin.
So no matter how high the price goes,
Right.
there's only ever going to be 21 million.
Exactly.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's this thing called halving events.
Of the events. Okay.
Yeah, so every 4 years, the rate at which new Bitcoins are created is cut in half.
Oh, wow.
So it's like it's slowly constricting the new coins coming into circulation.
So the supply is capped and it's also being constricted over time.
Exactly.
It's fascinating.
Mm.
What does that have to do with this buying the Bitcoin top forever idea?
Well, the author argues that, with each halving event, Bitcoin becomes more and more valuable over time. So it kind of reinforces that idea of just continuing to accumulate.
Right.
And they say that selling your Bitcoin for fiat currency is basically like trading in a superior asset for an inferior one.
Okay.
It's like going backwards.
Interesting. It's a compelling argument.
Yeah.
But it does raise some questions for me. Like, what about the practicality of never selling?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it make sense to take profits at some point?
Sure.
Especially when the price is fluctuating.
Of course people want to lock in gains.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does the article say about that?
Well, the author really doubles down here. They compare selling Bitcoin for fiat to like exchanging a gold bar for a handful of sand.
Wow.
They really believe that you're downgrading to a much less reliable asset.
Okay. I mean, that's a thought-provoking analogy, but
Yeah.
is it an oversimplification? I mean,
Yeah.
gold has industrial uses, right?
Right.
And fiat currencies still run the global economy.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, listener? Does
Right.
that analogy track for you, or do you see any holes in it?
Yeah. It's important to note that, the author isn't saying that fiat currency is going to disappear overnight,
Right.
but they are saying that Bitcoin represents a fundamental shift in thinking.
Okay.
A superior form of money that could eventually challenge the dominance of fiat currencies.
So it's not just about making a quick buck.
Right.
It's about participating in a potential financial revolution.
Exactly.
Wow. That adds a whole new dimension to this buying the top thing.
Yeah.
If you really believe in Bitcoin's long-term potential, maybe selling high is more about missing out on future gains
For sure.
than it is about timing the market.
Right.
And that leads to another interesting point that the article brings up, the distinction between Bitcoiners and people who are more focused on altcoins and short-term trading.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So let's talk about that. How are those approaches different?
Well, the article describes this kind of like one-way portal for Bitcoiners.
It's a one-way portal.
Yeah. Once they understand Bitcoin, its history, its technology, its potential, they rarely ever go back to traditional financial thinking.
Interesting.
They don't really dabble in altcoins or anything like that.
It's like they've had this epiphany, this aha
Yeah.
moment, and there's no going back.
Exactly. They see Bitcoin as the foundation of a new financial system, decentralized, transparent, and resistant to censorship and manipulation.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. This article dives into the psychology of this commitment.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this almost like religious belief in Bitcoin's future. They even call them Bitcoin maniacs, which I love that term.
It's a great term.
It is. And there seems to be a real sense of community and shared purpose among these individuals.
Oh, absolutely. It's a global phenomenon.
And the article suggests that there are hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, of these hardcore Bitcoiners worldwide.
Yeah, it's growing every day.
Wow. And they're all committed to accumulating Bitcoin as like a long-term strategy.
That's the idea.
So that's a pretty significant force, especially considering Bitcoin's fixed supply. If this community keeps growing, what kind of impact could that have on the market?
Well, that's a great question, and it leads us to the demand side of the equation. The article argues that this growing number of committed Bitcoiners,
Yeah.
combined with Bitcoin's limited supply, creates a really powerful dynamic.
So increased demand chasing a fixed supply could lead to some pretty significant price appreciation.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. It suggests a strong possibility of upward pressure on Bitcoin's value over the long term.
Okay, so it's not just about the numbers then.
Right.
It's about a global shift in perception.
Exactly.
So you're saying the more people who adopt this Bitcoin top forever philosophy, the more it reinforces this idea of Bitcoin as a superior form of money.
Right. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating.
Mhm.
Almost like a social movement,
Yeah.
you know, a collective bet on the future of money. But it also raises some pretty big questions. Is this level of conviction sustainable?
Yeah.
What are the risks involved?
Yeah.
What are the downsides to this all-in approach?
Sure.
What happens if Bitcoin doesn't live up to these expectations?
Yeah, those are all valid questions and ones that we'll dig into a little deeper as we continue to explore this buying the Bitcoin top forever philosophy.
All right, listener. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have
We've looked at the core ideas of this philosophy.
the contrast between Bitcoin and traditional assets.
Yeah, and the potential impact of growing adoption on Bitcoin's price.
And we've even touched on the psychological aspects, the unwavering conviction of some Bitcoiners.
Right. This real sense of community that fuels this movement.
Yeah, it's quite a phenomenon.
But we've also raised some important questions about the practicality,
Right.
the risks, the potential downsides of this all-in approach.
Definitely a lot to consider.
So in the next part of our deep dive, we'll continue to unpack these complexities and explore the nuances of the buying the Bitcoin top forever philosophy.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back, and we're really diving deeper into this whole buying the Bitcoin top forever thing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting philosophy. You know, one of the things that really stands out is that idea that timing the market becomes almost irrelevant. Instead of trying to predict the perfect moment to buy low and sell high,
Right.
the focus shifts to just continuous accumulation, no matter what the price is doing.
That takes some serious conviction.
It does.
To just ignore all the ups and downs and, just focus on that long game. The article even mentions that some of these hardcore Bitcoiners,
Yeah.
they almost see selling Bitcoin for fiat currency as like a betrayal,
Oh,
like giving up on the dream of a better financial system.
right.
What are your thoughts on that, listeners? Does that resonate with you, or is that a little too extreme?
It's definitely a perspective that you don't hear very often in the traditional financial world.
Right.
But it's important to remember that these folks, they really believe in Bitcoin's potential.
Yeah.
They see it as a superior form of money, something that could actually replace fiat currencies.
Yeah, it's a bold vision.
It is.
And it obviously drives their investment strategy. But wouldn't it make sense to at least think about taking some profits along the way?
I mean, sure, it's tempting to lock in those gains.
Right.
But for people who truly subscribe to this Bitcoin top forever idea,
Yeah.
selling Bitcoin even at a profit, it's seen as counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing out on being part of this potential financial revolution.
So it's not just about maximizing returns.
No.
It's about being part of something bigger,
Exactly.
a movement toward a more decentralized and equitable financial system.
Right.
That's pretty interesting. But let's get real for a second. Holding on to any asset long term,
Yeah,
especially one as volatile as Bitcoin,
Yes.
that takes a lot of risk tolerance.
absolutely. And the article acknowledges that There are definitely risks involved,
Okay.
but they stress the importance of understanding Bitcoin's fundamentals.
It's history.
Yeah, its technology, its potential.
Yeah.
You got to do your research before you jump in.
Right. You should never invest more than you can afford to lose. And you got to do your due diligence, especially with cryptocurrency.
For sure. And that brings us to another interesting aspect of this whole philosophy, the idea of Bitcoin as like a one-way portal.
A one-way portal. What do you mean?
Well, the article talks about how once people really grasp the concepts and the potential of Bitcoin, they rarely ever go back to traditional financial thinking.
Really?
They don't mess around with altcoins or any of that stuff.
It's like they've seen the light.
Exactly. There's no going back.
So they become so convinced of Bitcoin's superiority.
That other cryptocurrencies seem like distractions, almost like inferior imitations.
Right. So they're all in on Bitcoin.
Yeah. They see it as the original and the most secure cryptocurrency, the foundation of the whole crypto ecosystem.
This is getting deep.
It is. It's not just about speculation or making a quick buck. It's about being part of something that could fundamentally change the way finance works.
That's a pretty powerful idea. It's almost like an ideology.
It is. It's a belief system.
Yeah.
A way of looking at the world and the role of money.
But for someone who's new to all this,
Yeah.
it can be pretty overwhelming. There's so much information out there.
It's a lot to take in.
So many different opinions. Where do you even begin?
Well, I would say start with education.
Okay.
Learn about Bitcoin's history, the technology behind it.
Right.
Read articles, listen to podcasts, talk to people who are involved in the space.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Absolutely. Challenge your own assumptions and really try to form your own opinions.
Yeah. And there's no rush.
Take your time.
Take your time.
Learn as much as you can and then decide if this philosophy resonates with you.
That's great advice.
It's all about empowering yourself with knowledge so you can make informed decisions.
Right. Decisions that align with your own values and financial goals.
Exactly. And of course, it's important to remember that any investment, especially in the crypto world,
Yeah.
carries some level of risk.
Oh, sure.
Never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Absolutely.
And always do your own research. You know, this deep dive we're doing here, this is for educational purposes only.
Not financial advice.
Exactly.
We're just trying to explore these ideas and get people thinking.
Right.
Encourage some critical thinking. Maybe challenge some preconceived notions.
Now, speaking of challenging notions,
Okay.
the article talks about this concept of pump forever.
Pump forever. Okay, now I'm intrigued. What does that even mean?
Well, it's not about artificial market manipulation or anything like that.
Right.
It's about the fundamental structure of Bitcoin itself.
Right.
The fixed supply, the halving events, the growing global adoption.
Yeah.
All of these things create a system that's designed to continuously increase in value over time.
So as long as fiat currencies are prone to inflation and devaluation, Bitcoin with its scarcity and growing demand,
Right.
it could just keep going up in value.
It's a possibility. The more people believe in Bitcoin, the more demand it creates.
And the higher the price goes.
Exactly. It's a fascinating dynamic.
It is. But let's be real here. Not everyone is going to buy into this whole Bitcoin only thing.
Of course.
Some people just want to make some money.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Not at all.
How does the article address that more pragmatic approach to Bitcoin?
Well, it acknowledges that there are many different perspectives in the Bitcoin space,
Okay.
but it emphasizes this key distinction between Bitcoiners and people who are more into altcoins or short-term trading.
Okay.
Bitcoiners, especially the ones who subscribe to this buying the Bitcoin top forever philosophy,
Yeah.
they tend to have a much longer-term perspective.
They're not just trying to time the market or jump from one coin to the next.
Right.
They're in it for the long haul.
They believe in the underlying value proposition of Bitcoin.
Interesting. So it's almost like a philosophical divide.
It is. It's a different way of looking at money and value.
What do you think, listener tell? Do you lean towards the long-term conviction-driven approach?
Yeah.
Or are you more of a pragmatic, profit-oriented investor?
It's a good question.
There's no right or wrong answer here.
It's about finding what works for you, what aligns with your own values and your financial goals.
Yeah, the Bitcoin space is big enough for all kinds of perspectives.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that this whole world is constantly evolving.
That's true. What might seem radical today could be mainstream tomorrow.
Exactly.
So keep learning, keep asking those questions.
And stay curious.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, let's take a step back and think about what we've covered so far.
Okay.
We've explored the main ideas behind this buying the Bitcoin top forever philosophy.
We've looked at the arguments for and against it.
Right. and the psychology of long-term Bitcoin conviction.
And we've talked about the risks and the potential rewards.
Yeah, the difference between Bitcoin and altcoins.
The importance of doing your research and making informed decisions.
But there's still more to unpack
Oh, okay.
in the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
We'll explore the broader implications of this philosophy,
Okay.
its potential impact on the global financial system,
Wow.
and what it all means for the future of money.
This is getting really interesting.
It is. Stay tuned, because things are about to get really thought-provoking.
Okay, so here we are, the final part of our deep dive into this buying the Bitcoin top forever idea. And, exploring this whole thing has really made me rethink how I think about investing
Yeah,
and money in general.
it really challenges the status quo.
It does.
Yeah.
We've talked about so much the technical stuff about Bitcoin.
Yeah, the fixed supply, the halving events.
Right, and then that almost like psychological commitment of these Bitcoin believers.
The true believers.
Yeah, and we've touched on the risks and rewards, the difference between Bitcoin and all those other cryptocurrencies,
Right.
and that almost like ideological belief that Bitcoin could revolutionize the whole financial system.
It's a powerful idea.
It is. But now I kind of want to zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture.
Mm.
What happens if this Bitcoin top forever idea goes mainstream?
Yeah.
What could it mean for the future of money and the entire global economy?
Those are the big questions, right?
They are. And this article really goes there. It suggests that if enough people adopt this philosophy,
Yeah.
it could lead to a huge power shift.
A decentralization of power.
Exactly. Away from those big institutions like governments and banks.
And towards individuals.
Right. People would have more control over their own money.
They wouldn't have to rely on those traditional gatekeepers.
Wow. It's almost like a utopian vision.
It is.
But it's also a little bit scary.
Yeah.
What are the downsides of a completely decentralized system?
Well, that's what a lot of people are worried about. Could it lead to more instability?
Right. More fraud?
Yeah. What about hacking?
Could powerful people manipulate the system?
Those are all legitimate concerns. And how would governments even regulate a currency that operates outside their control?
It could be a bit of a Wild West scenario.
Yeah. It's definitely uncharted territory. There's no easy answer.
So the future of Bitcoin and how it affects the global financial system is still up in the air.
Absolutely.
But one thing's for sure, this whole thing is forcing us to rethink what money really is.
Yeah. And where power resides.
And the role of technology in all of this.
It's a really exciting time to be paying attention.
It is. So it's not just about how much Bitcoin is worth or making a quick profit.
It's much bigger than that.
It's about this fundamental conversation about the future of finance.
Right.
The nature of value and the balance of power between individuals and these big institutions.
And that's what makes this whole buying the Bitcoin top forever philosophy so interesting. It's not just a way to invest. It's a statement about what you believe in.
It is.
Yeah.
And whether or not you buy into the whole philosophy, it's important to understand these ideas.
Right.
Because they could have a huge impact on all of us.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to that core question we started with.
Right.
If you truly believe that Bitcoin is a superior form of money,
Yeah, a game changer for the financial system.
does the idea of buying the top even make sense?
Or is every chance to get more Bitcoin, no matter the price?
Yeah.
A chance to be part of something truly historic.
It really challenges you to think differently about investing.
It does. So what do you think, listener? Are you intrigued by this decentralized future?
Yeah.
Or are you still not sure about Bitcoin's long-term prospects?
There's no right answer.
Definitely not. We just want you to think critically about all this.
Do your own research.
Explore the source material. Talk to people.
The world of cryptocurrency is huge, and it's constantly changing.
And as we figure all this out, it's so important to stay curious and open-minded.
And to be willing to question everything.
Exactly. Well, this has been quite a journey.
It has.
We hope this deep dive into buying the Bitcoin top forever has sparked your curiosity.
And given you some food for thought.
It definitely has for me. The future of finance is being written right now.
And we all have a role to play in it.
That's a great way to put it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions.